Welcome everybody to today's webinar, which is entitled "Turning Tests into Insight: How Eurostar Rebuilt its Experimentation Engine." We've got a really awesome conversation lined up about how they were able to kind of rebuild their program from scratch. And I think it's going to be super valuable for everybody to listen to, because these are questions we get often. So for anybody that is not familiar with LaunchDarkly, we're a comprehensive feature management platform that helps teams reduce risk and accelerate software delivery. Whether it's traditional apps or cutting edge AI deployment, our platform, allows progressive delivery, experimentation, release control for some of the world's most innovative companies, 25% of the Fortune 500. Just again, a couple more quick housekeeping items before I introduce our group. In the Docs tab, we've got some documents curated already for anybody that wants to kind of have a follow-up here. And as we're going along, use the chat to share your thoughts and engage with anybody in the chat. And if you have any questions, drop it in the Q&A tab, and we'll try to either address it as we're talking or leave some time at the end for questions. So with that out of the way, let me just do a quick introduction. I'll introduce myself, and then I want to bring our guests on and get them talking here. So my name is Scott Schimmeldecker. I'm an experimentation specialist here at LaunchDarkly. And I want to introduce our friends from Eurostar. So Laura and Kai, can you tell us just a little bit, introduce Eurostar and tell us a little bit about yourselves and your role there?
Yes, thank you so much, Scott, for the introduction. And hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We are really excited to talk to you about what we did at Eurostar. So I am Laura. I am Belgian. My mother tongue is French. So hence the French accent. If you don't understand me, just please let me know. I've been at Eurostar for more than 3 years now, and I look after the optimization program there. So we run A/B testing, MVT, anything to try to drive more revenue and obviously to enhance the customer experience there. I've been building programs, experimentation programs at Eurostar, and then before Eurostar at Frasers Group and Event Cycles. So what Eurostar is essentially fast trains that are linking a big part of Europe together. So between London and Paris, but also London to Brussels and Amsterdam. And we have trains also that goes from Paris to Brussels, Amsterdam, and then Germany. So that's what we are selling, is train tickets to connect people within Europe. I'll let the floor to Kai.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Kai. I've also been at Eurostar for about 3 years now and started in CRO about 6 years ago. In my day-to-day, I'm helping product teams to launch their experiments on the website and also on the app. And more recently, in the past year, we've been implementing LaunchDarkly experiments and shifting our product areas through to LaunchDarkly. So I've been supporting heavily with this as well.
Amazing. And yes, I've gotten a chance to work with both of you guys, and it's been, a really great experience. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys today. So let's start out here, and I think one of the things that kind of we keyed in on here is that, you're a travel company, and when the pandemic hit, that was a really big impact. Because everything shut down and everything changed at that time. Can you tell me a little bit about what changed for Eurostar? What disappeared and what did you have to rebuild from scratch?
So yeah, during the pandemic, in fact, it was a really hard time, and I think it was a hard time for everyone, but it meant that Eurostar had to still run trains, even though they weren't selling as much as ticket they wanted to. And this essentially led to a staff reduction, and it meant that the optimization team that was existing there before left. And then after the pandemic, Eurostar started hiring again, and so a whole new workforce came into play. And these events just meant that the expertise around the experimentation program was gone and needed to be rebuilt. So when Kai and I came in about more than 3 years ago, we essentially looked at the tool that we had, and we understood that it wasn't really aligned with our new ways of working and our new setup with that new workforce. Sorry. And so in 3 steps, what we had to do here is the first one to be able to get this program going again. The first step was around doing a technical audit. So this just makes sense. You need to go into, that's what we did. We went into our tools, understanding what tools we had, not only the A/B testing one, but you've got to look into what tools as analytics you are using, how is the implementation working there. This is really important to make your A/B testing program functioning. And so essentially understanding who would be the support to help us to either make changes or deciding what we keep, because it's very much relevant with our development infrastructure, etc. So this leads me to the second point, where it was really important to build strong relationships and, rebuilding essentially that experimentation perception and the value that it could bring to the business. We spent a lot of time in training our stakeholders. We spent a lot of time in explaining the basic concepts of experimentation. This is really important because if you want all your tools and a good setup of experiment, you've got to have people to understand what you're talking about, essentially. And then also, we spent a lot of time on clarifying our processes. So we sat down with people and we discussed what a good A/B testing lifecycle looked like. We agreed on ownership and governance, etc. And then also, once all of this was agreed, we built an amazing documentation that we keep updating every day. And this is really useful because we do come back often to that. Hang on, what did we agree again, etc. All of this just helped us to, have a really smooth integration with those teams and integrating our program at Eurostar.
Amazing. God, I can think of, because I faced a similar challenge to try to build an experimentation program, and you're keying in on some of the really important topics that need handling. That's amazing. So you said building in smooth transition in with the teams. What was the biggest hurdle that you faced when you were building and scaling your experimentation program?
So for us, it was really about gaining the stakeholders' trust. And just to set the scene a little, when we joined in 2022, we were planning to merge with another rail operator in Europe called Thales. The idea was to have one website, one brand, one app, and you've got customers who are using the services for completely different purposes. Continentally, we see a lot more business travel, so people traveling Paris to Brussels and vice versa for work. Whereas on the London routes, you tend to see a lot more visiting family and friends or traveling for holiday. So what our users needed was completely different in both cases. And we had to have a website that could deliver all of these new functionalities and features. And so that's where a lot of our dev resource, our analytics resource needed to be at the time. And unfortunately, that meant that A/B testing was sort of seen as like this heavy drain on resource. We were perceived as being very slow as we were delaying feature releases. So rather than fighting this, we tried to gain our stakeholders' trust through education. So we've showcased the importance of experimentation, what happens when you don't test or have a measurement plan in place. We've gone through experiment design and CRO principles, as well as given our stakeholders a very basic understanding of frequentist stats. So things like understanding what statistical significance is and what we mean when we say that the result is statistically significant or isn't. So just top level things. And we've delivered this in sort of a mix of both formal training sessions with smaller groups, as well as informal training. So just having those conversations with stakeholders on a day-to-day basis and being a point of contact if they do have questions, making sure that they are comfortable with asking us and we can point them to the right resource or explain it to them.
Amazing. So a lot of, both trust building exercises kind of internally and education along the way to make sure that people both understood that, what you're trying to do, why, and how it's going to help drive value. So that does really key in on the important part that education can play here. So how did you get the internal buy-in from your stakeholders, after, during and after the education that you put together?
So discussing this with Kai, we understood that I think there are really 4 steps that we took that really help us to get that buy-in. And the first, and I think the most important one that really helped us is getting an A/B test out there. It should be really easy, even if you think that it's a win, clearly a win, just go and put it out there as soon as possible. This has helped us for a few reasons. The first one is it helped us with the results. It helped us to demonstrate value very quickly. So, it demonstrates the valuable insights that you can share internally and what you can bring to different teams within the business. Not only that is going to ultimately generate interest and raise curiosity within the business. People are going to come to you and ask, oh, if you A/B tested that, could we come and could we try this? So they're going to come to you and ask to do more A/B tests. But besides that, it did help us also to A/B test our workflow. So putting an A/B test out there did help us to understand where were the gaps, where we needed to optimize our workflow when going live with an A/B test. There are so many parts, that need to work together, a lot of different teams and a lot of different tools that need to talk to each other. So that was just very valuable for us. The second point that really helped us to get the buy-in is identifying some champions in different teams. So essentially, it's really good that you are the one, shouting about the value of experimentation internally. But we found that having someone that could echo what we are saying in different teams really helped us to raise the profile of the program internally and help us to scale up our program essentially. So that's a really important point too. And then the third one is I think it makes sense, but we try to be as much as possible being very approachable and responsive. So, any question is a good question, letting people to come to us. And as Kai mentioned, we spend a lot of time training our team and making sure that they know as much as us what we are talking about. And I think that's really important. And the last point is creating visibility and accessibility. So from the start, we really made sure that we had a lot of dedicated channels where people could reach out and where we would overly communicate what we are doing. So not only obviously an A/B test going live and the results that you're getting, but anything related to small successes, like, first mobile app A/B test, this is going, or we are doing this QA, who can look into this? All of that is really important. And then also, because we have a lot of product owners team, we just try to make sure we were involved in a lot of regular meetings of theirs. And then also we had our own, and this really helped us to create momentum and plan a really strong roadmap. So all of this is just these combinations of events help us to create trust internally and help to position the experimentation program as a key step into our decision-making culture.
That's awesome. So I love point 3, just from my own personal experience as well. In a previous role, the kind of data science or statistics people were often thought of as math bullies because we came in and said, hey, your product isn't as effective as you think it is, and here's the reasons why. And really just kind of being able to change the wording a little bit to say, this is what the data are showing us. Let us work together to make this, to be responsive. is such a huge trust building factor. So absolutely love that. So how did the trust evolve with your stakeholders from like that initial pushback to, okay, we're going to take your advice? What were some of the turning points along the way?
So honestly, at the beginning, CRO was really an afterthought. So a lot of the time, the feature had already been developed, and then we were approached and asked to A/B test something. So a lot of the time, it meant that the scope was too wide, or the experiment itself might actually violate some experimental design features. So, for example, we might have something that would lead us to have unequal groups in the control and the variant. For example, a train search with one passenger versus in the variant, you're only including the train searches with two passengers. These are completely different groups. You're violating your sample sizes being equal and randomized there. We're also, as you said, like also kind of seen as like kind of bullies around this. Whenever there was a negative result, we were not really encouraged to share this as a learning and iterate on this, but it was more seen as a failure and something that we should avoid sharing with the business. So we've done 4 things really to try and change that attitude. As we've mentioned quite a bit, with stakeholder education was massive to us. That's what really drove the change in perception of how we as a team were perceived, but also how experimentation was perceived. And we found it really beneficial to put in regular catch-ups with each product area. Just starting with half an hour or an hour each week can be really beneficial to drive that conversation. And whilst we were the ones leading that conversation, we've often found that our teams have just come to us very proactively with points to discuss, things that might impact the test or difficulties around developing the test that could arise. We also increased the visibility of the program, so things like sending out a quarterly email to the wider business so they know what we're doing, what our team actually works on, and what tests are going live and planned for the future. We've also been in product and tech meetings, so highlighting the experiments that have run within those areas. And then we've also then started to be involved in other teams' meetings. So we started to get invited to design syncs, sprint reviews, refinement, sometimes even the occasional stand-up. And that's where we've really seen the collaboration strengthen between all of our teams. And as cliche as it is, break down the silos. And once we've done these 4 things, we've really noticed that the attitude towards experimentation has really shifted. We see that we're more involved towards the start of the conversation. We see that the product teams actually build space in their roadmaps for experiments. It's also been a lot more flexible to be able to iterate and add those iterations and new test ideas into the roadmap. And we're no longer seen as an afterthought or felt as a blocker, but rather experimentation is seen as a measurement plan and something that all teams should be considering, whether it's A/B testing, time series, market to market, at least looking at one type of measurement plan for each new feature that's released.
Oh God, that's amazing. I mean, just pointing out the fact that experimentation is truly a team sport here, right? And it really does involve teams and responsibilities from all over the enterprise to come together to execute on, these hypotheses and get valid testing. So real quickly, before LaunchDarkly, what were the biggest experimentation constraints? You mentioned that you had been running some experimentation before. We've been working with you for the past year. So what were some of the challenges you had before?
So before LaunchDarkly, our main constraint was how our middleware, A/B testing middleware, was set up. Essentially, it was a URL-based experiment app. So really based on that URL. And also it meant that we had multiple branches to look at. And also not only that, the complexity is our website is separated in a couple of apps and different apps. And so this had to live alongside of that. So all the constraints could be grouped into 3 points. The 2 first one being around development. It took a significant effort for our development team to build and to remove those A/B tests, and because of that complexity, but also the maintenance of it meant that it was really complex to keep it clean. They had to remove the A/B test every time from that branch, or also managing different branches at the same time of, one of the A/B tests and one is like the site, etc. All of that created unwanted little issues often. And the third constraint was around experimentation limitation. So the URL one meant that we could run only one A/B test per URL, and that was a constraint for us because throughout the funnel we've got different teams that are sharing the same URL. So it just took a lot of organization and time to just agree on what would be the A/B testing roadmap. And then it limited us to, increase that velocity. And essentially also having a URL one, it meant that the targeting, we didn't have a lot of information for us to be able to target the set of users we wanted. So Kai mentioned experimentation was seen as slow at times. And so moving to feature flag with LaunchDarkly helped us to really shut down those constraints and then help us to scale up and speed up our program.
Oh, amazing. So Kai, talk to me a little bit about, how you started to leverage LaunchDarkly's experimentation.
Yeah, so we're in a quite good place. Our experimentation program had really begun to mature. And actually, our developers were already using LaunchDarkly feature flags for release management, sometimes even using them with our old experimentation tool. So they had actually invited us to start using LaunchDarkly experiments and playing around and sort of seeing if this is something we would like to continue with and explore for our program. And the more we looked into LaunchDarkly, we realized that this could resolve some of those experimentation bottlenecks that Laura just mentioned as well. And for us, the first thing was getting in touch with you and the team. So we had Julia, who's our account exec. We had Cami, our solutions expert, and you, Scott, as our experimentation solution expert as well. Regular catch-ups with you guys really helped to streamline us in implementing LaunchDarkly experimentation, and we were able to start running our first AA test, as well as looking into the data logs, thanks to your support, so we could compare the data logs from LaunchDarkly with our other data sources as well.
Awesome. I mean, were there any new use cases that we were able to unlock for you, and was there impact from that?
Yeah, we've unlocked quite a few new use cases. So we were able to do more advanced audience targeting. In the past, because of our middleware, we could only target information that was available within the URL or the URL parameter, and each page has different URL parameters, so it made it really complex in trying to target anything other than markets. Really was quite difficult to do with just regex. With LaunchDarkly, we're able to use the context attributes to target a lot more things about the user that we already know. Also anything that's on the page, different lengths of journey time, different products. We're also able to start running more tests on the same URL. Previously, we were limited to one per URL. And this has really shifted us from a more waterfall style of workflow to a much more agile workflow, which the teams absolutely love. We've also been able to start running mobile app tests, which we couldn't previously do, and we're now running both native and web view page tests. And overall, we've seen much smoother collaborations with all teams, especially with developers and analytics teams. Feature flagging has just really streamlined the process for us, both before going live with the test and also when dev are hard coding or leaving the feature flag running for a period of time. And it's also reduced the dependency both on developers and the analytics team for support as well. And I have a few examples in the next two slides.
Awesome. Yeah. Can you do that? I wanted to get to some of these examples. Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. So this test might seem a little bit simple, but I'll get onto why it was quite complex for us to do. So this is for a train-only booking at the booking confirmation page. And the idea is to get the user to add a hotel to their booking once they've already transacted. So we already have a version of this banner that just displays one hotel, and you'll go through to the hotel search page. You can choose your hotel there. We wanted to actually show a gallery so that users could just swipe through and look at the different hotel offerings, and if one interests them, they could go through and book. So this should be a fairly simple A/B test, but because of the conditions to show that banner, it made it quite difficult for us. For example, if a user selected traveling for business, then we'll show a business banner. So we needed to exclude those users. We wanted to exclude the US, Germany, and rest of the world. We also want to exclude anyone who's traveling on a same day return, as they won't need a hotel, and any destinations that we do not offer hotels for currently should also not be included in the test. When we tried to run this test without LaunchDarkly, we did encounter a sample ratio mismatch, which is when the groups between the control and the variant are not equal, and this invalidates your data. So we couldn't use your data previously. But with LaunchDarkly and adding our rules through context attributes, we haven't seen an SRM. And for this test, we saw that users were actually less likely to search, but not any less likely to book. So we do think that they were using the carousel to actually browse through rather than having to navigate from page to page to page. So we saw this as a success, and we've now implemented this as we think it's got a better user experience.
Absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about this one.
Yeah, so this was actually our first mobile app test, and the team came to us as we were planning to do our first ever LaunchDarkly test, and this actually ended up being the first one that we ran. So in our control, this is our home screen of our mobile app, and in variant B, we've implemented a header at the top of the screen. If the user interacts with the header, they'll be taken to the book tab at the bottom of the train icon, and they can then go on to make a search. We saw an increase in searches by 2%, a reduction in exits from the home screen of 0.6%, which for us was a great success. And it was really nice that the first ever LaunchDarkly test and mobile app test was a success, both in terms of being able to run it and having positive results. And for us, it's great that we're seeing that 1 in 7 of our tests now are mobile app tests. And this may not seem like a lot, but considering that we were not planning on mobile app testing until 2026, this is huge for us. So there's been a great uptake in mobile app testing since we started with LaunchDarkly.
Amazing. I want to just be really, really conscious because we're about 1 minute left till the end of the time here. So just, we're gonna have to skip a few slides ahead, and I know there was at least one question in the Q&A, so we'll stick around a little bit after if anybody wants to stick around to answer the questions. But Laura, I wanted to ask you, so if you were to rebuild, you built an experimentation program from near zero. What would you suggest people do in like the first 90 days of trying to kind of kickstart their program?
I mean, this is just a recap of everything that has been said earlier, but in 4 points, I think it's just really important you spend time in auditing the tools that you've got, understanding what are your capabilities, where are your gaps, and what you need to change in there. Make sure you contact your tool provider. These people, as Kai mentioned, especially here at LaunchDarkly, really helped us to integrate that tool and to move the needle, to move really forward with this. And then also upskill people, not just the experimentation team. Everyone should have a really shared understanding of their own responsibility and how an experimentation program should be run. What are the complexity in terms of development and analytics, because everything just talks together. And like you say, it's a team effort. Spot blockers early. I think that just really makes sense. Spot your champions. Really make sure that you've got, you're going to come in as a team and be really disruptive into processes with people. So just make sure that whatever workflow you try to embed, understand the workflow that already exists, and just, that would be really powerful, I think, moving forward. And then again, as I mentioned, start testing as soon as possible. This will be a great pilot for your workflow, but also it will show value internally. And then the last point is make sure you're part of every single, little meetings that you can have with the team that will help you to share the value, to show the value of the program, and then also increase visibility. As Kai mentioned, we talked about a lot. We overly communicate everything we were doing and formalize the collaboration. Just be part of those regular meetings, build your own regular meeting. These things just, I think those are the tips that really helped us to move the program forward.
Amazing. So, I mean, this is just a little bit different than I would say, maybe a slight variation off of that, but like, is there anything that you would do differently than you did up front?
Yeah, so we would actually start first with feature flags just because we found it so much more efficient to work in that way, rather than having your development team work in branches. And also make sure your analytics are very robust at the start so that you have trust in your program. Secondly, make sure that you have established an experimentation framework and make sure that the roles are clearly defined and that your stakeholders know what is expected of them and when they need to do this. For example, if they need to be involved in the QA or assisting with the analytics. Make sure you also get your stakeholder buy-in, so identify those champions who will advocate for you, and they're going to help to both drive and create a culture of learning where you'll be able to start using data to drive decisions rather than using opinions.
I get asked often, so this is one that maybe I'm gonna put to both of you here. But I get asked this question often, and I like to ask it to folks as well. I'm often asked, hey, what does it take to set up a culture of experimentation at a company? We've talked about it a lot here, but what we didn't do is talk about what does a culture of experimentation mean to you? And Laura, I'll start with you. Then Kai, I want you to answer that question as well. And I want to see if there are thoughts differences. Like when you hear culture of experimentation, what does that mean to you?
It means that to me, A/B testing or experimentation is really embedded into the thought process. Essentially, we are a very much product-led experimentation program. So the product team would have a lot of features that they want to A/B test, and so we would anything that they would like to put live, and so anything that they would like to put live, we would more likely be A/B testing. So or if it's rejected and not being A/B tested, the insights team would have a very strong measure plan for that. So to me, experimentation program just means that it's embedded at different level, not only with your team, but different team would want to A/B test, and as a safety, anything you put live would want to do that. And then also, I think is really much when everyone get involved in trying to get the program better. We've reviewed so many processes with our insights team, with our development team and the products team. Everybody want to understand how can we make that thing better. And I think that's great. And that's really much when you've got a whole experimentation culture.
Amazing. Kai, do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, I love Laura's answer and I agree with this 100%. I think your whole business needs to be thinking about how do we measure something when we release a new feature, whether that is through A/B testing, multi-arm bandits, time series analysis. There should be at least some sort of measurement plan for you to validate your findings. I also would add to that and say not just validating the product roadmap, but also having a culture where anyone can suggest a test idea. And ideally, this would go through some kind of prioritization score to make sure that we are testing ideas that we think are likely to drive the most value. And this means that anyone can suggest an idea. We'll go through that scoring and you end up testing it. If we think there's enough of an ROI on testing this feature or functionality, I think that's what will really drive your, like, versus validating the product roadmap versus driving a culture of experimentation. I think that's sort of the difference for me.
I love that. I love that. I think both of you guys have keyed in on parts of this that are, making sure that everybody understands the value that is actually being driven here and kind of the additional information that we can bring to our fingertips to make better data driven decisions. I always will often also, comment, and I think Kai, you talked about this just a little bit here at the end, right? Is everybody can offer, you know, experiment suggestions or ideas because it feels like a safe space to try things out, as long as you're doing so in a structured way and have data and facts to back up, your test. So it's not just trying everything out and praying that something works, but taking a structured approach to it, but feeling safe to be able to do so. And I think if you can engender that with your team, you're along a good path. Awesome. Okay. I know we've got a short bit of time left here, and I want to make sure. I know there's been at least one question in the Q&A, so let's see if we can't answer that here. How did you manage your experimentation triage approach following internal buy-in to ensure return on investment?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's actually a slide that maybe I can go to that slide that we didn't talk about.
We skipped that, yeah.
Yes, we skipped this one. We actually have a few steps there. So yeah, in terms of triage, I think choosing what not to A/B test is as much as important as A/B testing. Only because you really need to have an understanding. I mean, as a team, we decided this year to focus on quality and not quantity, and making sure that those A/B tests are delivering insights. And so there is a list here of things that we just decided, where we've agreed with the analytical team on things that we don't want to test, because it's not bringing that quality of insights, or it's bringing complexity into A/B testing. So then, there are things that are illegal to test, like prices. In terms of technicality, how long does it take for a development team to build a test? You've got to look into the effort and the value you would get out of this, but also technically, if there are things that you just can't measure, so if you can build it but you can't measure, the analytics can't follow, then there is no point, I think, of A/B testing. And then, there are other concepts that you just can't A/B test, like brand image, brand perception. Sorry, it's really difficult to just put a KPI towards that. And then, as a team, we make sure that we calculate what is called the minimum detectable effect. This is essentially giving you an estimate of how long it will take you to reach the sample size, to reach statistical significance into a chosen metric. And so if that's over 2 months, we decide not to test, because we do want to have, that momentum of A/B testing. And then I didn't touch base on that, but we moved away from big, large A/B tests and consecutive pages A/B tests, because we thought and we found that it's not really bringing us any quality or valuable learnings that we could share internally. And then anything that is, if an PO wants to A/B test something on someone else's roadmap, if it's delaying that, we're not A/B testing and say, so this is essentially the triage that we are going through as a team. Is being presented internally. People are looking at that as well as us. And so when this is failing and we're deciding not to A/B test, this is moving to our insights team, and they will always have a measure plan. Kai mentioned those ones, but there is a different way of quantifying the changes that are going on. It's a good candidate.
You made a really, really good point, and I think you're circling around another point that maybe isn't in here, but one that I used to say all the time, which was often, if you don't plan on making a different decision, right? If you're just doing this as a way to measure and prove that you're actually, you're as smart as you think you are, and you're never going to actually make a different decision, roll back, or choose a different variation, then don't A/B test it. Just get a good measurement on it, and you're okay, right? It's okay to roll out changes without experimenting on them if you know the risk and can accept that. So
Yeah.
I think you've keyed in on quite a few amazing points here. And I think we've only got a couple minutes left. I do see that one more question just came in here. Let's see if I can't get to that quickly. How do you make sure that the other team's roadmap contains some % of experimentation quota for them to be accountable for execution? I think that is just speaking to some of the cross-team collaboration that's required. How do you make sure that some of those teams that need to be at the table actually reserve enough bandwidth to take on part of the experiment implementation?
So I think it's about having the conversation really early on and making sure that both teams, everyone within the product team and the experimentation team, is involved very early on. Then we can actually allocate those resources. And if it is something that is between two teams, the product owner can decide on which team would be building that based on what they have, what resource they have available, and what's coming up in their roadmap. They may want to deprioritize something to be able to run that experiment. It just really depends case by case, but definitely letting people know what you want to test way in advance really does help.
Yeah. I think that is really a key, is being in, and it comes with building that culture and that trust. Is the earlier and the earlier we get in onto these conversations, the more impact we can have, because we can, make sure that what's being developed is testable, it's measurable, and everybody's aligned with what the decisions are we're going to make, once we see the results. So awesome. Okay, I think we've got we're close to the end of time here. So I'm gonna, stop asking some questions here. I just want to, again, thank you guys so much for coming and talking to us. This has been, I've been excited about this for weeks, and it went better than I was even hoping. So I'm overly appreciative for you guys. Thank you to anybody that joined. If you've got further questions, please feel free to, contact us, reach out. There are meeting links. We will be here for you. And please, there will be a brief survey that comes after this. It's 2 questions. We want to make sure that what we're doing is impactful, answering questions, and helpful for everybody. So please feel free to do that. But other than that, I want to thank you, Laura. I want to thank you, Kai. I'm thrilled. Thank you so much.